Hello and welcome to the Whispering Worlds channel. Dive into an emotional journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. What would you do if the life you built was based on a devastating lie? Sam's story is one of heartbreak, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of truth. When a whispered secret shakes his world, he faces impossible choices that test his faith in love, family, and himself. Now, we want you to be part of this emotional journey. Imagine yourself in Sam's shoes. Would you choose forgiveness, or would the pain be too great to bear? Share your thoughts, your own experiences, or your advice for the characters as they navigate this complex web of emotions. Your perspective matters. Step into the story and let us know. What would you do when faced with the ultimate betrayal? I never imagined a simple dinner party could unravel my world. The night had started innocently enough. My wife, Emma, and I were hosting a small gathering of close friends at our suburban home in Denver. Laughter and wine flowed as everyone chatted about work, life, and shared memories. Emma looked radiant, as always. Her auburn hair caught the dim light, and her laughter was infectious. Yet, there was an undercurrent I couldn't quite place, a nagging sense that something was off. The evening seemed perfect at first. Emma had gone all out preparing for the dinner party. She'd spent the afternoon baking her famous cheesecake and perfecting the table setting. The dining room sparkled with candles and tasteful floral arrangements, and our guests, a mix of old friends and newer acquaintances, seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling that kept creeping into the edges of my thoughts. It was during dessert when I overheard it. I had excused myself to grab another bottle of wine from the kitchen and, as I returned, I caught the hushed voices of Emma's two closest friends, Natalie and Bridget. Standing just out of sight by the kitchen door, I froze when I heard my name. "Does he still not know?" Natalie asked, her voice low but clear. "No," Bridget replied, shaking her head. "It's been years, Nat. They have a child now. What good would it do to dig all that up?" My heart skipped a beat. I leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. "I still can't believe she kept it from him," Natalie continued. "I mean, sleeping with Ryan weeks before their wedding? And now little Mia." "Well, Bridget sighed. "It's not our place to judge. Emma made her choices." I froze. My vision blurred as the words sank in. Ryan, Mia, weeks before the wedding. My hands gripped the countertop, my knuckles whitening. Could it be true? Was the life I'd built with Emma based on a lie? "Sam? Are you okay?" I jolted upright, nearly knocking over a wine glass. It was Emma, her warm brown eyes searching mine. She was holding a plate of half-eaten cheesecake, her lips curved in a soft smile. The image of her standing there, so composed and loving, felt like a cruel juxtaposition to the storm brewing in my chest. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just needed a breather." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek before returning to the living room. I stayed behind, my mind racing. I needed answers, but confronting Emma now would only cause a scene. Instead, I resolved to bide my time and piece things together quietly. For Mia's sake, for our family's sake, I had to be certain before making any accusations. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I barely registered the laughter, the clinking glasses, or the heartfelt goodbyes as our friends filtered out one by one. Emma's smile never wavered, her demeanor effortlessly charming. But all I could see were the cracks beneath the surface, cracks that I had been too blind to notice before. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed the snippets of conversation I'd overheard, searching for meaning, for answers. Had Natalie and Bridget been exaggerating? Could there be some other explanation? And if it was true, how had Emma managed to keep such a devastating secret from me for so long? I glanced over at Mia's bedroom door, slightly ajar down the hall. Her soft, even breathing drifted through the quiet house. She was our light, our joy, but now even her existence was shadowed by doubt. The next morning, the unease lingered. As Emma bustled around the kitchen preparing breakfast, Her every move seemed scrutinized under a new lens. Was her cheerfulness genuine, or was it a mask? I watched her closely, searching for signs of guilt or deception, but she gave nothing away. "You're awfully quiet this morning," she remarked, placing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of me. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "Late night, I guess." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer, but her eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than usual. I wondered if she could sense the shift, if she knew the trust between us had begun to erode. As I drove to work later that morning, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I replayed every significant moment of our relationship, searching for clues I might have missed. When had the lies begun? How much of our life together had been real? The questions gnawed at me, each one more painful than the last. I needed to know the truth. For Mia. For myself. For the man I thought I was and the woman I thought I'd married. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind full of doubt, I resolved to uncover the secrets Emma had buried, no matter what it would cost. The morning after the dinner party was an exercise in maintaining appearances. Emma hummed softly to herself as she packed Mia's lunch for school, her every action exuding an effortless calm. Meanwhile, I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. My mind was racing, replaying the conversation I had overheard the night before. Natalie's words echoed like a haunting refrain. Sleeping with Ryan weeks before their wedding, and now little Mia. Every glance at Emma brought a fresh wave of questions. Was her light-hearted demeanor an act? Could she sense the growing rift between us? I struggled to look at her without searching for signs of deceit. "You're awfully quiet this morning," Emma remarked, placing Mia's lunchbox into her backpack. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile, one I hoped didn't betray the storm beneath the surface. "Just tired. Long night." She nodded and turned back to her task, seemingly unbothered. Mia bounded into the room moments later, her curly hair a wild mess and her backpack straps slipping off her small shoulders. "Daddy, can you take me to school today?" she asked, her bright blue eyes, a shade I had never questioned before, fixing on mine. I hesitated, a pang of guilt hitting me as I looked at her. "Of course, sweetheart. Go get your shoes on, and I'll meet you at the door." As she scampered off, Emma approached me with a soft smile. "Thanks for doing that. I've got a conference call first thing this morning." "No problem," I replied, my tone neutral. I avoided her gaze as I grabbed my keys and followed Mia out the door. The drive to school was uneventful, but my mind was anything but. Mia chattered away about her class project, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing within me. As I watched her skip toward the school entrance, her backpack bouncing with every step, I felt an ache in my chest. No matter what I discovered, Mia was innocent in all this. She was my daughter in every way that mattered, or at least that's what I tried to convince myself. At work, I found it impossible to focus. My colleague and friend, Marcus, noticed my distraction almost immediately. We'd worked together for years, and he had an uncanny ability to read me. "Hey, Sam, you've been staring at that spreadsheet for 15 minutes, he said, leaning against the edge of my desk. "What's going on?" I hesitated, debating whether to confide in him. Marcus was trustworthy, but this wasn't just office gossip. This was my life. Still, I needed an outside perspective. "It's Emma," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something feels off. I overheard Natalie and Bridget talking last night. They mentioned something about Emma and Ryan before our wedding. And Mia?" I trailed off, unable to say the words out loud. Marcus's brows furrowed. "Ryan? Isn't he that guy she was close with in college?" I nodded. Apparently, they had something going on right before the wedding. "I don't know if it's true, but if Mia isn't mine," my voice cracked, and I looked away. Marcus was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Listen, man, you need to tread carefully here. Don't jump to conclusions. Talk to Emma, get the facts. And if you're really worried, maybe consider a, paternity test." The suggestion hit me like a punch to the gut, but I knew he was right. I just don't know how to bring it up without blowing everything up, I admitted. You'll figure it out, Marcus said firmly. But don't let this fester. The longer you wait, the worse it'll get. That evening I resolved to probe further, but subtly. After putting Mia to bed, I joined Emma on the couch. She was scrolling through her phone, looking relaxed and content. The sight of her like that only added to my frustration. Hey Em, I said casually, leaning back against the cushions. Do you ever hear from Ryan anymore? Her reaction was subtle but telling. She stiffened, just for a moment, before forcing a smile. No, not really. Why do you ask? I don't know, I replied, keeping my tone light. Natalie mentioned him the other night, and it got me thinking. You guys were pretty close in college, right? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Yeah, we were friends. But that was a long time ago. Why the sudden interest? Just curious, I said with a shrug. She changed the subject quickly, and I let her, but my suspicions only grew. Her reaction confirmed that there was something she didn't want me to know. Later that night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I needed to know the truth, but I couldn't confront her without more evidence. For now, I would keep digging, even if it meant uncovering something that could shatter our lives. The weight of doubt was unbearable. Each day that passed without answers felt like I was living someone else's life, watching my actions from a distance. I knew I couldn't keep the questions bottled up any longer. I needed clarity, but I also needed to be smart. Confronting Emma directly would put her on guard, and I couldn't afford that. The first step was Natalie and Bridget. They had let the secret slip, and I hoped they could give me the truth, or at least enough to confirm or disprove my suspicions. I texted Natalie first, asking if she had time to meet for coffee. The response came quickly, "Sure. How about tomorrow at 2? Perfect." When the time came, I arrived early at a quiet cafe downtown. The smell of fresh-baked pastries filled the air, but I couldn't enjoy it. My nerves were frayed, and my stomach churned as I waited. Natalie walked in a few minutes later, wearing her usual bright smile and casual chic outfit. She seemed surprised to see me alone. "Hey, Sam," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Where's Emma? I thought this was a couple's coffee date." "No, just me today," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I wanted to talk to you about something personal." Her smile faltered slightly, and she shifted in her seat. "Sure. What's up?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "At the dinner party the other night, I overheard you and Bridget talking. You mentioned something about Ryan and Emma before the wedding." Natalie's face drained of color, and she looked down at her coffee. "Sam, I don't think." "Please, Nat," I interrupted. "I need to know the truth. I'm not angry with you, but I can't keep living like this. If there's something I don't know, I deserve to hear it." Her fingers tightened around the mug, and she sighed deeply. "Sam, it's not my place to tell you. I shouldn't have even mentioned it that night. It's complicated." "Complicated," I repeated, my voice rising. "Mia's parentage might not be what I think, and that's complicated? Natalie, this is my life we're talking about." She flinched at the edge in my tone but finally nodded. "Okay, look, Emma and Ryan. They had a thing, but it was years ago. It ended before you two got married. As for Mia," she hesitated again, then shook her head. "I don't know for sure. Emma never said anything to me about it, but I guess the timing was close." Her words hit me like a blow. Close. The euphemism felt like a dagger in my chest. "Thank you for telling me," I said, standing abruptly. My voice was tight, and I couldn't meet her eyes. "Sam, wait," she called after me. "Don't do anything rash. Talk to Emma first. Okay?" I didn't answer as I walked out of the cafe, my mind a storm of emotions. That night, I sat in my car outside the house, staring at the glowing windows. Inside, Emma was putting Mia to bed, reading her a bedtime story like she did every night. The sight of her silhouette through the curtains made my heart ache. Despite everything, I loved her. But love couldn't fix this, not if what I feared was true. I pulled out my phone and opened a search engine. The words paternity test discrete options stared back at me as I typed them in. A part of me hated myself for even considering it, but I needed certainty. I found a local clinic that promised confidentiality and quick results. Tomorrow I would call. The following day, I waited until Emma left for work before collecting the sample. Mia's hairbrush sat on the bathroom counter. A few strands of her curls caught in the bristles. My hands trembled as I placed them into a small plastic bag. It felt wrong, like a betrayal of the trust between us. But was it any worse than what Emma had done to me? At the clinic, the staff were professional and efficient. The process was simple. Submit my sample and Mia's, pay the fee, and wait for the results. They assured me I'd have answers within a week. The waiting was agony. Every moment with Mia felt bittersweet. Every interaction with Emma a test of my resolve. She noticed my mood but attributed it to stress at work. I let her believe that, unwilling to show my hand until I knew the truth. By the 5th day, I could hardly function. The results came via email, and my heart raced as I opened the message. The words blurred for a moment, and then I saw it. Probability of paternity. 99.98%. Relief and guilt washed over me in equal measure. Mia was mine, biologically, legally, and emotionally. But the betrayal still lingered, and I couldn't ignore the cracks in our foundation. Emma had hidden something monumental from me, and that trust might never fully return. That night, I waited for Emma to finish putting Mia to bed before confronting her. She walked into the living room, her face lighting up with a smile when she saw me. But her expression faltered when she noticed the serious look on my face. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I took a deep breath, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. "Emma, we need to talk. About Ryan. About what happened before the wedding. And about why you felt you couldn't tell me the truth." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay, let's talk." The moment I had dreaded and needed had finally arrived. The silence in the living room was suffocating. Emma sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes scanning my face for clues about how much I already knew. The dim glow of the table lamp cast long shadows on the walls, amplifying the tension that hung between us. "Sam," she began cautiously, "I don't know what you've heard, but I need you to understand. Whatever it is, I love you. I've always loved you." Her words landed with a dull thud. They felt rehearsed, as if she had prepared for this moment, though she hadn't expected it to come tonight. "I overheard Natalie and Bridget at the dinner party," I said bluntly, my voice low but steady. "They were talking about Ryan, about you and him, and about Mia." Emma's face paled. Her composure faltered for just a second before she took a deep breath. "I see. That's it? That's all you have to say?" I leaned forward, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "Emma, I need the truth. No half answers, no deflections. Just tell me." She hesitated, biting her lip as her gaze dropped to her hands. For a moment, I thought she might refuse, but then she spoke. "Ryan and I, we were close in college. You know that. But it wasn't just friendship. We were together for a while." I nodded, already knowing this part. "What happened before our wedding?" She flinched, the words cutting through the room like a knife. "It was a mistake. A stupid, reckless mistake." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. "I ran into him a few months before the wedding. We caught up, and one thing led to another." "One thing led to another?" I repeated bitterly. "That's all you have to say? Emma, you slept with him." Her tears spilled over, and she buried her face in her hands. "I regretted it immediately. I wanted to tell you, but I was terrified you'd call off the wedding. I thought if I buried it, if I never let it happen again, we could move past it." I leaned back, struggling to process her words. Part of me wanted to shout, to rage against her betrayal, but another part of me just felt empty. "And Mia?" Her head shot up, her eyes wide with horror. "Mia is your daughter, Sam. I swear on everything, she's yours. I never doubted that. I needed to know for sure." I said quietly. I already did the test. Her expression shifted to one of shock, and then hurt. You did a paternity test? What choice did I have? I snapped. You lied to me, Emma. You lied about something that could have changed everything. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the sound of Emma's quiet sobs. I wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I'm sorry, she whispered after a long pause. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you, Sam. Please don't let this destroy us. Don't let this destroy our family. Her words hung in the air, a desperate plea that echoed in my mind. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Emma gave me space, sensing that any attempt to push for reconciliation would backfire. We functioned as co-parents for Mia's sake, but the warmth and intimacy we once shared were replaced by a cold, awkward distance. Marcus, ever the blunt but supportive friend, noticed my strained demeanor during lunch one afternoon. So, did you talk to her? He asked, biting into his sandwich. Yeah, I replied. She admitted everything. And I don't know what to do, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. She says she loves me, that it was a mistake. But how do you move past something like this? Marcus leaned back, his expression thoughtful. That's not a question anyone else can answer for you. But if you're asking me, I think it comes down to whether you believe she's genuinely sorry and whether you can see a future with her. If you can't, it's better to walk away now than to let this fester. His words stayed with me as I drove home that evening. Emma's betrayal had cut deep, but I couldn't deny that part of me still loved her. The thought of tearing our family apart, of leaving Mia without the stability of both parents, was unbearable. That night, I found Emma sitting on the back porch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Can we talk? I asked, sitting down beside her. She nodded, her hands clutching the blanket tightly. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way. She closed her eyes, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. I understand. But, I continued, I want to try, for Mia's sake and maybe for us. If you're willing to do the work, to rebuild what we've lost, I'll meet you halfway. Her eyes snapped open, filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. You mean that? I nodded. But it's going to take time, a lot of time, and I need complete honesty from now on. No more secrets. I promise, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for giving us a chance. As we sat there under the stars, a fragile truce formed between us. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to heal. The truce Emma and I forged that night was tenuous at best. In the weeks that followed, we existed in a state of uneasy coexistence. On the surface, life carried on as usual. We shared meals, attended Mia's school events, and navigated the routines of daily life. But beneath it all was a palpable tension, a sense of waiting for what, I wasn't sure. Emma made good on her promise to be transparent. She volunteered details about her day, her thoughts, and her feelings. At first, her efforts felt performative, as if she were trying to prove something. But as time passed, I began to see glimpses of the Emma I had fallen in love with, kind, attentive, and deeply remorseful. Still, the betrayal lingered like an unwelcome houseguest. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't help but wonder, had she looked at Ryan the same way? Had she laughed with him, shared secrets with him, the way she once had with me? One evening, as we sat in the living room after Mia had gone to bed, Emma broke the silence. I've been thinking, she said hesitantly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. About what? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. About us. About what I can do to make things right. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. I know I can't erase what I've done, but I want to try to rebuild what we've lost. I was thinking maybe we could try couples therapy. The suggestion caught me off guard. Therapy had never been something we'd considered before, not even during the tougher moments of our marriage. But as I thought about it, I realized it might be what we needed. A space to confront the past and figure out if we had a future. "I'll think about it," I said finally, and her face softened with relief. The next day, I brought up the idea with Marcus over lunch. "Emma suggested couples therapy," I said, stirring my coffee absently. "What do you think?" "I think it's a good idea," he replied without hesitation. "If you're serious about trying to fix things, having a professional guide you through it could make all the difference." "And if I'm not sure I want to fix things?" Marcus shrugged. "Then therapy might help you figure that out too. Either way, it's worth a shot." His words stuck with me, and later that evening, I told Emma I was willing to give it a try. The relief on her face was evident, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were moving toward something, rather than just treading water. Our first therapy session was uncomfortable. The counselor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Lawson, greeted us warmly and invited us to sit on the plush couch in her office. Emma and I exchanged a nervous glance before taking our seats. "So," Dr. Lawson began, folding her hands in her lap, "what brings you two here today?" Emma looked at me, silently asking if she should go first. I nodded, and she took a deep breath. "I made a terrible mistake," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I betrayed Sam's trust, and I'm here because I want to fix our marriage, if he's willing to try." Dr. Lawson turned to me. "And how do you feel about that, Sam?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I'm angry, hurt. I don't know if I can trust her again. But I also don't want to make any decisions I'll regret. I'm here because I want to figure out if there's a way forward." The session was grueling. Dr. Lawson asked probing questions about our relationship, our history, and the events leading up to Emma's betrayal. At times, the emotions were overwhelming. Tears, raised voices, moments of silence so heavy they felt like physical weights. But by the end of the hour, I felt a sliver of clarity. Over the next few weeks, therapy became a regular part of our lives. Each session brought new revelations, some painful, some hopeful. Emma opened up about her insecurities, her regrets, and her fear of losing me. I admitted to my own shortcomings, including the ways I had unintentionally neglected her in the years leading up to the affair. One evening after a particularly emotional session, Emma turned to me as we walked to the car. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "For staying," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "For giving me a chance to make this right." I didn't know how to respond, so I simply nodded. The road to forgiveness was long, and I wasn't sure where it would end. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope that it might lead somewhere worth going. While therapy helped us begin to rebuild, it also forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Love wasn't always enough. Trust, once broken, was difficult to repair. There were days when the anger and resentment felt insurmountable, when I questioned whether I was making the right choice by staying. But then there were moments, small, fleeting moments, that reminded me of why I had fallen in love with Emma in the first place. The way she laughed when Mia told a silly joke. The way she touched my hand gently, as if asking for permission. The way she looked at me, not with expectation, but with quiet hope. One night, as I lay awake in bed, I realized something. No matter what happened between Emma and me, we were forever connected through Mia. She was the bridge between us, the reason I was willing to try, the light that guided me through the darkest moments. I turned to Emma, who was sleeping beside me, her face soft and peaceful in the moonlight. Reaching out, I took her hand in mine. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. In that moment, I made a decision. I would keep trying, not for Emma, not even for myself, but for the family we had built together. It wouldn't be easy, and the scars would never fully fade. But maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal. The sense of progress Emma and I had made in therapy was fragile, like a vase glued back together, whole but bearing cracks that would always be visible. Some days I could almost believe we were on the path to healing. Other days, the weight of what she had done pressed on me so heavily that it was hard to breathe. One evening, I came home late from work to find Emma sitting at the dining table, a glass of wine in her hand. She had a distant look in her eyes, one I hadn't seen in a long time. "Everything okay?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. She startled slightly, as if I'd pulled her from a dream. "Yeah, just thinking." I sat down across from her, studying her face. "What about?" She hesitated, swirling the wine in her glass. "About the past. About Ryan." The mention of his name was like a knife to the chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What about him?" "I saw something today," she said quietly. "A post on social media. He's moving back to Denver." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. "Did he reach out to you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "No," she said quickly, her eyes wide with alarm. "I haven't spoken to him since before the wedding. But seeing that post brought back a lot of memories. It made me think about everything I've put you through." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "What kind of memories?" Her gaze dropped to the table. "Shame, regret, fear. I've spent so much time trying to forget what happened, but it's always there, lingering in the back of my mind." Her honesty disarmed me, but it also left me feeling vulnerable. "Do you still have feelings for him?" Her head shot up, her eyes brimming with tears. "No, Sam, never. What I did was a terrible mistake, but it was never about love. It was about me being weak and selfish. You're the only person I've ever wanted to build a life with." I studied her for a long moment, searching for any trace of deception. But all I saw was sincerity and pain. Ryan's impending return added an unexpected complication to our already fragile situation. Although Emma assured me she had no intention of reconnecting with him, his presence in the same city felt like a shadow looming over us. I couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind. What if he tried to reach out to her? What if the sight of him stirred old feelings she thought she'd buried? In therapy, I brought up my fears. "I don't know how to handle this," I admitted. "Part of me wants to trust her, but another part of me can't help but imagine the worst." Dr. Lawson nodded thoughtfully. "It's natural to feel this way, Sam. Trust is built through consistent actions over time. What steps can Emma take to help you feel more secure?" Emma, sitting beside me, spoke up. "I'll do whatever you need, Sam. If it helps, I can block him on social media, make sure he has no way of contacting me. And if he tries to reach out, I'll tell you immediately." Her willingness to address the issue head-on gave me some comfort, but it didn't completely quiet my doubts. As the weeks passed, I found myself increasingly preoccupied with thoughts of Ryan. What kind of person was he? What did he have that I didn't? I hated that I was letting him take up so much space in my mind, even though he was technically still absent from our lives. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I searched his name online and found his social media profile. His posts were public, filled with photos of outdoor adventures, smiling friends, and professional accolades. He seemed polished, successful, and confident, the kind of man anyone might admire. Seeing his face brought a surge of anger I hadn't anticipated. This was the man who had nearly destroyed my family, whether he'd intended to or not. One afternoon, while Emma was out running errands, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Natalie. "Hey Sam, just a heads up, Ryan reached out to me. Said he wanted to catch up and asked about Emma. Thought you should know." The room seemed to tilt slightly as I read the message. I felt a rush of emotions. Anger, betrayal, fear. I texted her back immediately. "Did you tell him anything?" "No." I shut it down. "But I thought you'd want to know." When Emma returned home, I confronted her. "Ryan's been asking about you," I said bluntly, holding up my phone to show her the message. Her face drained of color as she read it. "Sam, I swear I had no idea. I haven't spoken to him, and I don't want to." "Why is he reaching out now?" I demanded. "What does he want?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "But if he contacts me, I'll tell him to leave us alone. I promise." Her response calmed me slightly, but the unease lingered. The ghost of Ryan had re-entered our lives, and I couldn't shake the feeling that his presence would test the fragile progress Emma and I had made. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something. Forgiveness wasn't just about Emma. It was about me too. If I continued to let the past consume me, I would never be free of it. But knowing that and living it were two different things. The road ahead felt darker than ever, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't ready to give up yet. Ryan's return to Denver was more disruptive than I could have imagined. Though he hadn't reached out to Emma directly, his presence loomed like an unwelcome specter. The tension in our household grew thicker with every passing day, and Emma did her best to reassure me. She blocked him on social media as promised and even shared her accounts with me for full transparency. But it wasn't enough. Deep down, I felt like a dam holding back a flood, straining against the weight of my insecurities and fears. It was a chilly Saturday morning when the dam finally cracked. Mia was at a friend's house for a playdate, and Emma and I were in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reading the paper. I was about to suggest going for a hike when her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, and her face immediately tensed. "What is it?" I asked, already dreading the answer. She hesitated, then handed me the phone. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Emma. I'm back in town. Would love to catch up sometime. Hope all is well, Ryan." My hand clenched around the phone as I read the words. "Did you give him your number?" "No," she said quickly. "I don't even know how he got it." "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice rising. "Because this doesn't feel like a coincidence, Emma. Did you reach out to him?" "Sam, I swear I didn't," she said, her voice cracking. "You have to believe me." The anger bubbling inside me finally erupted. "How can I believe you, Emma? How can I trust you when every time I start to feel like we're making progress, this happens? He's like a ghost haunting our marriage, and I'm sick of it." Her face crumpled, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't ask for this, Sam. I've been doing everything I can to fix what I broke, but you keep holding it over my head. How are we supposed to move forward if you won't let go of the past?" Her words hit me like a slap. She wasn't wrong, but the weight of my pain wouldn't let me concede so easily. For the rest of the day, we barely spoke. Emma eventually retreated to the bedroom, and I stayed in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, doubt, and exhaustion. Later that evening, I finally found the courage to say what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I walked into the bedroom and sat down on the edge of the bed. Emma was curled up under the blanket, her back to me. "I think we need some space," I said quietly. She rolled over, her eyes red and puffy. "What do you mean?" "I don't know if we can keep doing this," I admitted. "Every time I think I'm ready to move forward, something pulls me back. Maybe we need time apart to figure out what we really want." Her face crumpled again, but she didn't argue. "If that's what you need," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The next day, I packed a small bag and told Mia I was going on a work trip. The lie felt like another crack in the foundation, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. I checked into a hotel downtown, hoping the distance would help me clear my head. Over the next week, I found myself reflecting on everything. Therapy sessions replayed in my mind, Emma's words echoing alongside my own. I loved her, but was love enough to repair what we'd lost? And then there was Mia. Sweet, innocent Mia, who didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of our turmoil. By the end of the week, I made a decision. I called Emma and asked if we could meet. We met at a park near our home, a neutral space where the memories wouldn't overwhelm us. Emma arrived first, sitting on a bench and fidgeting with her hands. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, sitting beside her. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to," she admitted. I took a deep breath. "Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about everything that's happened. I don't have all the answers yet, but I know one thing. I don't want to give up on our family." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached for my hand. "Neither do I. But," I continued, "if we're going to make this work, we have to lay everything on the table. No more secrets, no more half-truths. We can't let Ryan or anyone else come between us again. I promise, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but sitting there with Emma, I realized we still had a chance. And that was enough to take the next step. The decision to recommit to our marriage felt like stepping onto a shaky bridge. Each step forward was tentative, the structure creaking under the weight of our shared history. But it was a step nonetheless, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were moving toward something instead of away from it. Emma and I returned to therapy with renewed focus. Dr. Lawson was encouraging but firm, guiding us through difficult conversations that forced us to confront our fears, insecurities, and lingering doubts. Trust is like a bank account, she said during one session. It takes consistent deposits to build it, but one major withdrawal can wipe it out. You're both here because you want to rebuild that account, and that's going to require patience and vulnerability. Emma threw herself into the process wholeheartedly. She continued to be transparent, sharing every detail of her day and involving me in aspects of her life that she'd once kept private. She even suggested we write letters to each other, a way to express our feelings without the heat of an argument. Her first letter arrived one morning, left on my nightstand. I opened it carefully, unsure of what to expect. Sam, there aren't enough words to express how sorry I am for the pain I've caused you. Every day, I wake up and think about the trust one shattered and the love I jeopardized. I know I can't erase the past, but I want you to know that I'm here, fully committed to earning back your trust and building a future we can both be proud of. I love you, always, Emma. Her words moved me more than I wanted to admit. That night, I sat down to write my own letter. Emma, I've been angry, so angry that it's blinded me to the efforts you've made to repair what was broken. But I see you now. I see the woman I fell in love with, the woman who's willing to fight for us. I want to believe we can find our way back to each other, but I need time. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for not giving up on me, Sam. The letters became a ritual, a way for us to bridge the emotional distance that still lingered between us. They didn't solve everything, but they opened the door to conversations that had once felt impossible. One evening, after reading a particularly heartfelt letter from Emma, I found myself reflecting on the early days of our relationship. I remembered how we'd spent hours talking about our dreams and fears, how we'd laughed until our sides ached, how the world had seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us. Do you remember our first date? I asked Emma that night as we sat on the couch, the TV playing softly in the background. She looked up, surprised but smiling. Of course, the art museum. You spent 20 minutes trying to convince me that abstract art wasn't just random splatters of paint. I laughed, the memory bringing a rare moment of lightness. And you spent 20 minutes rolling your eyes at me. Her smile softened. That was the first time I realized how much I liked you. You were so passionate about everything, even things I didn't understand. It made me want to understand them too. Her words struck a chord, and for a moment, the weight of our recent struggles lifted. As the weeks turned into months, the cracks in our relationship began to mend, though faint scars remained. We made a conscious effort to prioritize time together. Date nights, family outings, quiet evenings at home. Each shared moment felt like another brick in the wall we were rebuilding. But the past had a way of creeping back in, testing the strength of our resolve. One evening, while cleaning out an old box in the garage, I stumbled upon a photo of Emma and Ryan from her college days. They were laughing, their arms draped around each other in a way that spoke of intimacy. For a moment, the anger and jealousy surged anew. I clenched the photo tightly, debating whether to throw it away or confront Emma. But then I thought of the progress we'd made, the promises we'd kept. Slowly, I placed the photo back in the box. That night, I told Emma about the photo. She looked at me, her expression a mix of concern and understanding. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I know it must have been hard." "It was," I admitted, "but I didn't want to hide it. We've had enough secrets." Her hand found mine, and for the first time I felt a sense of peace. The journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks and difficult days, moments when the pain of the past felt insurmountable. But there were also victories. Small, quiet victories that reminded us of why we were fighting to stay together. One evening, as we sat together on the porch watching Mia play in the yard, Emma turned to me. "Do you think we'll ever feel whole again?" she asked softly. I thought about it for a long moment before answering. Maybe not the way we were before, but maybe we can build something new, something stronger. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we watched the sunset together, the colors painting the sky with the promise of a new day. Life was starting to settle into a new rhythm. Emma and I had found a tentative peace, a fragile but growing sense of normalcy. Therapy sessions were no longer fraught with tears and recriminations but had become a space for reflection and growth. Mia, oblivious to the struggles that had nearly torn her parents apart, remained the bright light that anchored us. But shadows of the past have a way of resurfacing, often at the worst possible moments. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Ryan reappeared, uninvited, in our lives. I had taken Mia to the park while Emma stayed home to catch up on work. We were playing tag when I saw him. He was leaning against a bench on the edge of the playground, his arms crossed, watching us. My body tensed immediately, a mix of anger and dread washing over me. Ryan hadn't changed much since the photos I'd seen of him. Tall, confident, and infuriatingly composed. "Daddy, are you okay?" Mia asked, tugging on my hand. I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Why don't you go down the slide one more time? I'll be right here." She ran off, her laughter ringing through the air, and I approached Ryan. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low but firm. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I just wanted to talk." "Talk about what?" He glanced toward Mia, then back at me. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private?" I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to leave Mia unattended, but the tension between us was palpable, and I didn't want to cause a scene. 5 minutes, I said, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the park. Ryan followed, his expression unreadable. Once we were out of earshot, he spoke. "I wanted to apologize. For everything." I stared at him, incredulous. "You think an apology is going to fix what you did?" "No," he admitted. "I know I can't undo the past, but I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized how much damage I caused, not just to Emma, but to you and your family. I've been carrying that guilt for a long time." His words caught me off guard. I had expected arrogance or deflection, not remorse. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come back after all this time?" "I don't have a good answer for that," he admitted. "Maybe I just needed closure. I thought if I could make amends, it might help me move on." "Move on from what?" "From her." He shook his head. "No. From the mistakes I made. From the person I used to be." When I got home, I told Emma what had happened. Her face turned pale, and she sat down heavily on the couch. "He approached you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," I replied. "He said he wanted to apologize." Emma covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling. "I'm so sorry, Sam. I thought we were done with this. I thought he was gone." "He says he wants closure," I said, my tone measured. "Do you believe him?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and uncertainty. "I don't know. I haven't spoken to him in years. But if he truly wants to make amends, maybe we should let him." Her suggestion stunned me. "Let him? Emma, he nearly destroyed us. Why should we give him the satisfaction of absolution?" "Because forgiveness isn't about him," she said softly. "It's about us. About letting go of the pain and anger that's been holding us back." Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. I didn't want to admit it, but she was right. The bitterness I had been clinging to was like a chain around my neck, dragging me down. If we were going to move forward, I had to let it go. A week later, I arranged to meet Ryan one last time. This time it was on my terms, at a quiet coffee shop far from home. Emma supported my decision but chose not to come with me. Ryan arrived on time, looking nervous but composed. As we sat across from each other, I spoke first. You said you wanted to make amends. This is your chance. Say what you need to say. He nodded, taking a deep breath. I know I can't undo what I did, but I need you to know that it wasn't about you. It wasn't about trying to hurt you or take anything from you. I was selfish and immature, and I didn't think about the consequences of my actions. I'm sorry, Sam. Truly. For a long moment I said nothing. I searched his face for signs of deceit but found none. I don't forgive you for what you did to Emma or me, I said finally. But I do forgive you for the hold you've had on my life. I'm done carrying this. He looked surprised but nodded. I understand. Thank you for hearing me out. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years I felt free. That night I shared everything with Emma. She listened quietly, tears streaming down her face. When I finished, she reached for my hand. Thank you, Sam, for doing this, for us. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. We're stronger than he ever was, Emma. Stronger than the past. For the first time, I believed it. We weren't perfect, and we never would be, but we had something more valuable. Resilience. And together, we were ready to face whatever came next. The final step in our journey came not with a dramatic confrontation or a sudden epiphany, but with quiet, deliberate choices. Day by day, Emma and I worked to rebuild the life we had nearly lost. It wasn't easy, but it was real, and that made it worth fighting for. 6 months after Ryan's reappearance, life looked different. Steadier, calmer, and, in some ways, even better. The foundation of our marriage had been shaken, but in the rebuilding process, we had constructed something more honest and enduring. Therapy had shifted from weekly sessions to monthly check-ins, a sign of the progress we had made. Dr. Lawson noted the change in our dynamic during one of our final appointments. You two communicate with more openness and empathy now than when we first started, she said with a smile. That's a testament to the work you've put in. Emma and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of how far we'd come. Our lives became less about looking backward and more about moving forward. We planned family outings, celebrated Mia's milestones, and rediscovered the joy of each other's company. There were still moments of doubt. An unintentional glance or a misplaced comment could stir old insecurities, but they no longer defined us. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Emma reached for my hand. Do you ever think about the future? She asked. Every day, I replied. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about it. She smiled, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. I want us to renew our vows. Not as an obligation, but as a celebration of what we've been through and what we've built together. Her suggestion surprised me, but as I thought about it, I realized it was exactly what we needed. I'd like that, I said. Let's do it. The vow renewal ceremony was small and intimate, held in the same park where we had started to rebuild our trust. Mia played the role of flower girl, her giggles filling the air as she tossed petals with reckless enthusiasm. Marcus stood beside me as my best man, his broad grin a reminder of the unwavering support he'd offered through it all. Emma's vows were heartfelt and raw. Sam, she began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I stand here today because of your forgiveness, your strength, and your willingness to fight for us. I promise to cherish you, to honor you, and to never take for granted the love we share. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I will spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve it. My own vows came straight from the heart. Emma, we've walked through fire together, and though the flames left scars, they also revealed something stronger beneath. I promise to love you not for who we were, but for who we are and who we're becoming. You are my partner, my love, and my home. And I choose you now and always. As we exchanged rings, I felt a sense of closure. Not just for the pain we had endured, but for the doubts that had plagued me. This was our fresh start, one built on honesty, resilience, and love. The celebration that followed was simple but joyous. Friends and family gathered around, laughing, sharing stories, and toasting to new beginnings. Mia danced with Marcus, her laughter lighting up the evening. Watching her, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For all the struggles, the heartbreak, and the nights spent questioning everything, we had emerged on the other side stronger. We weren't perfect, but we were whole, and that was enough. Later that night, after the guests had left and Mia was asleep, Emma and I sat on the porch once again, the remnants of the celebration scattered around us. "Do you think we'll ever stop working at this?" she asked, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I hope not," I said with a soft smile. "Because the work is what makes it worth it." She kissed my cheek, her touch warm and familiar. "I love you, Sam." "I love you too, Emma," I replied, pulling her closer. As we sat together under the stars, I realized that the life we were building wasn't about erasing the past. It was about embracing it, scars and all. And in that moment, I knew we had truly found our new beginning. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.